Welcome back to the 10th Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, and here we go, part 1 of 3, our top 30 best movies of 2023, with, of course, some honorable mentions, which is exactly where we'll start. If there's no objections, I think I will start with my honorables, and I had more honorables this year than I normally do. As a matter of fact, I have 10.
Wow.
And normally I only have, say, maybe 2 or 3 that I would really feel comfortable slipping in as honorable mentions. My honorables are more extensive this year because, in general, and I said it right from the top of these movie awards, I thought this year was a pretty darn good year in film, a better year for what I saw personally. So I have a lot more that I feel comfortable putting in there as honorable mentions. So I'm just going to rapid fire you my 10, and then we'll kind of talk about each of them briefly. My 10 honorable mentions for best movies of 2023 are Barbie, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, You Hurt My Feelings, The Flash. All 4 of those movies I gave 75, so 7.5 out of 10. Knock at the Cabin, Haunted Mansion, The Creator, Thanksgiving, Renfield, and Suzume. Suzume's a cheater from last year.
Yeah. I know Suzume.
Right. So those are my 10. Those are my honorable mentions. Now let's talk about them a little bit. So before I kind of talk about them, can I get your initial reaction, your knee-jerk reaction on a couple of them?
Well, some of them I'm surprised. Like I'm really surprised that Knock at the Cabin isn't at least a little higher. Not that I expect like top 10 necessarily.
Right.
But you really seem to dig that movie.
Yeah.
And you definitely dig Doug and Dave Bautista, which I mean is also fair. You love him. You love Dave Bautista.
I love that man.
But I mean, Barbie's the interesting one because Barbie's like the big deal this year, right? Like. So that's interesting that that's an honorable mention.
Barbie's was one of the last ones to fall off the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember everything you said. Suzume, I'm not actually... that movie was not nearly as good as I thought it was going to be.
Nah.
It was good, but I didn't love that either. And
so like Shazam, You Hurt My Feelings.
Oh, The Flash was a totally solid movie that did horribly at the box office, and that's sad.
Haunted Mansion.
Oh, I do want to say one thing about Haunted Mansion.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Because I had a note for this.
All right.
Owen Wilson was the best part. Okay, so they're talking about that one ghost they need to find, and they're talking about how he didn't have chairs in this one room because he didn't want anybody sitting when he entered the room.
Right.
And there was something else petty that the guy did. I can't remember what it was. And Wilson says, and it was maybe one of my favorite lines of the year. This guy was so petty, you almost gotta respect
it.
I laughed so hard at that line.
That's a good line.
That's the only thing I wrote down about Haunted Mansion was that line because I wanted to remember it just in case it came up at the end of the year.
Nice. And then The Creator, Thanksgiving, and Renfield.
I forgot completely. Just like maybe I was blocking out you mentioning The Creator or something because I didn't even hear.
Oh yeah.
I mean, whatever.
All right. So like Suzume for me was one that I just kind of saw on a whim.
Yeah.
Because I was on vacation and it was playing at Park Lane. So I was like, oh cool, I'll go watch this.
You're always watching these Japanese movies.
Always at Park Lane.
Yeah, that's funny.
And it was a movie that I had relatively high expectations for, knowing that it was like a Makoto Shinkai and the other ones that he's done. I've really, really liked. And like, it's very obvious that he's never going to step outside of like the coming of age subgenre, but he keeps making good stuff inside of it. So it's like, this was still totally good. It didn't hold up to the ones that he had done before. So like a movie that's not really without its faults, obviously, namely the fact that it features a 17-year-old girl like dating a 25-year-old teacher's assistant. Everybody's just like, yeah, that's fine.
Just Japan, bro. Just Japan.
I guess
no big deal.
That's cool. But like the visuals and music are excellent in it, and like the plot and the screenplay are pretty basic, but the other stuff around it I thought kind of at least made up for it. Renfield, I just had fun. Like, I just had fun with Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage just yucking it up with each other, and that's about the extent of it. I don't think it stood out with anything super interesting. Thanksgiving, we talked about, like, I was so impressed with what Eli Roth was able to do, like, on an absolute, what seemed like an absolute whim, just showing up, just randomly showing up again and dropping this great, like, entertaining romp. Like, it hits you with some comedy. There's a lot of entertainment value in it, including but not limited to probably the best opening scene of the year for Thanksgiving, which was like the Black Friday.
Oh yeah, that was great.
That beginning is so good, and I'm like, wow, if this sets the tone for this, this is fantastic. Because it really takes that Black Friday American stereotype that doesn't come from nowhere, because we've seen some stuff, and just turn it up to 11, and it was so, like, really, like, gruesome and gory kills.
That's what horror should do, too.
Exactly.
Right? Take some, like, real life stuff and just amplify it.
Yeah. And it was enjoyably cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, super cheesy, but enjoyably cheesy. The Creator, obviously I had higher hopes for it. It's still a really pretty movie, and it's still, like, it's not, like, I say Avatar with AI, which is the way I described it earlier. I really liked Avatar.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I really liked Avatar. But we've now kind of seen that formula a few times, so it's just a movie that should have been much higher on this list than it actually was. Haunted Mansion, another one that I just had fun with, and like, I'm starting to think Lakeith Stanfield is a genius. Like,
he is good.
I think he's a straight up genius.
Yeah, no, he's good.
And he's got one at the beginning of this year too, the Book of Clarence. Book of Clarence?
I might watch it just for him.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm super interested in that movie, but he'll probably be good. So I might watch it.
Absolutely. Knock at the Cabin, I was kind of surprised didn't stick around in my top 30, but because I saw so much this year, it was just, that was another one that was kind of a late cut that, like, I don't love this. The Flash, I don't know why they're still, like, trying to build on top of existing DC when we're like, that whole movie is Flashpoint.
Well,
so
remember,
like,
it was kind of already made though, right?
Yeah,
it is one of those movies, kind of like Black Widow, is like a good movie at the wrong time.
Right. And I mean, like, they needed an excuse to give James Gunn carte blanche, and that's what that movie did. So it's like, all right, cool, fair enough. You Hurt My Feelings was another one that I saw at Park Lane and was expecting not a ton from it.
Right.
But, like, really enjoyable from, like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus in particular. Shazam, kind of the same thing. And again, it's like, why are you... Maybe that was the same deal where it was, like, already made or already, like, you couldn't really reverse course. But it's like, again, you're kind of like, you have a very particular DC cameo in that movie. And it's like, you're building on top of something that is not going to exist after the fact, so it's kind of weird. And then Barbie. Let's finish on Barbie. So, like I say, one of the last cuts out of my top 30. There's so many ideas at play in that movie. Like, it addresses, or at least brings up, so many, like, I don't want to call them, like, feminist talking points, but, like, I mean, ideas, right?
Look, Gerwig and Robbie themselves said it's a feminist movie.
Yes, of course.
So they said it, so it's a feminist movie.
Right. But I feel like it brings up so many of them that it's talking about so many things it doesn't really take, or it may not necessarily take the adequate amount of time with each of them. And it's like, there was so much conversation when the movie came out about, like, what is this movie even about? Or like, what do they try to say? I
still don't know.
Right. So when I sit there and I'm like, what I took from the movie was that, like, what's important was finding meaning within oneself rather than finding meaning in someone else.
Right.
That was my take from Barbie. And I think I'm probably both right and incomplete in saying that.
Man.
But, like, that was kind of that was my take, right? And I kind of dug the way that they sort of positioned the Kens as, like, sympathetic heels almost at some point in the movie.
But then
it's so pretty and it's whatever. But yeah.
I don't know what to say. Listen, I've watched.
Damn you, Greta Gerwig.
I've watched videos before, numerous videos, to get different perspectives on what people thought this movie meant.
Right.
And some people are like, feminism, okay, sure, just feminist, right? Okay, cool. Some people were like unintentionally crapped on feminism. I'm like, okay, I can see that point too.
Right.
And he's like, you're right, because it does bring up so many things. It's like you say about sympathetic heels for Ken. It's like, yeah, but then also when Ken, like Ryan Gosling Ken, does have like a moment that could have been more emotional, it's played for laughs. As opposed to Robbie, who's having like these crying fits that everyone's taking seriously.
Right.
So it's like, what am I supposed to feel about that, considering this movie has placed so much emphasis on its message?
Yes.
Right? And this is what I feel about the movie. Is like, I don't know what you want me to take from this.
Right.
Because, like, do I think the movie hates men, like some people say? No.
No.
Do I think that there's... And it doesn't have to address men's issues, especially since it's Barbie. It would be totally fine if it only addressed women's issues.
Right.
But Gerwig and her husband there, Noah Baumbach?
Right, yeah.
Because he co-wrote it with her. They literally go out there to throw in men's issues, so I gotta talk about it. And there's parts in this movie where I'm like, this could be a really interesting, especially for mainstream Hollywood perspective on masculinity and toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But then it wimps out. Like, because there's something to be said, and I've said this to you a million times and people a million times, there's something to be said about dealing with, like, male isolation and how that could turn into violence because, like, 20-year-old, lonely, rejected men are really dangerous. And there's nothing wrong with saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's fine, but then it'll throw something in the movie that completely undoes its goodwill. And I'm sitting there watching it like for the message, and I'm like, I don't know if what this movie's saying, and I don't know that the movie knows what it's saying sometimes. But then other times I'm like, oh, it's clearly saying this. No, it's clearly saying this. No, it's clearly. Why is this Barbie movie so confusing?
Right.
And I don't even know if that's a criticism. That might be genius. Like, I really don't know.
That may be this movie working as intended.
Yeah, it's
entirely possible.
Here's the thing. It's unbelievably smart or unbelievably stupid. I do got some other points. I wrote down some notes. Okay. Renfield, the way I would have improved Renfield was I would have made it about Dracula instead. Because more Nicolas Cage hamming up would have made it a better movie. I know that they were going in a different way. I just personally, because Cage was the best part of that movie. But I like Renfield. All right, and going back to Shinkai.
Yep.
I've seen 4 of his movies.
Okay.
I think Suzume's the worst of them, but still a 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
So probably like just off my honorable mentions. 5 centimeters per second back in 2007.
Okay.
I don't remember much about it, but I really liked it, apparently. Then there was Weathering with You.
Weathering with You,
That's
right.
the one you were probably referring to that came
Right.
after your name. And Suzume is still beautiful, still has some emotional moments. There's just wonky dialogue and stuff that you can, like, Yeah, but I like Suzume's. And then there was... Knock at the Cabin. I'll be quick.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know if I like or dislike the twist or the lack of.
Right.
I still don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
Because, like, part of it's like, yeah, there you go, that's pretty cool. And then part of it's like, well, I kind of wanted a twist. I don't know. I guess I got a lot of confusion this year in, like, my movies. Because, like, I like the movie. I don't love it.
Right.
I do like it. I just don't know how I feel about that part. And I probably never will.
I think that probably would have been worth... I think maybe if I had rewatched it, it probably would have landed higher. Yeah. Just because it was from, like, early in the year and what have you. But... that's all fair.
All right. So my honorable mentions are, starting off with possibly the best title of the year, Aliens Abducted My Parents and Now I Feel Kind of Left Out.
Then sounds like a manga. Sorry, go ahead.
Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I actually liked it a fair bit.
Okay.
Then there's Kill Boksoon, like a South Korean movie.
Okay.
Theater Camp, A Good Person, Unicorn Wars, Somebody I Used to Know, Eileen, which was a little upsetting that it wasn't higher, but I did like it, obviously. And then, The Iron Claw.
Ooh, The Iron Claw missed out. Okay.
Purposely left out
200 movies, right?
Because I thought that would probably be a bigger deal to you.
Okay. I did want to make mention, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I saw it. It just kind of felt off. It landed in what I call my kind of high average range. I'm watching this movie and I'm just like, oh, my immediate direct comparison to this is The Edge of 17.
Which I think is probably a better movie.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I feel like there's something missing here that wasn't missing in that movie, and maybe that's not a good way to look at it. I probably should have just judged The Edge of 17 as its own thing. But I thought it did a really good job of staying faithful to the time period because it's set in the 80s, and I was like, it feels like it's set in the 80s. Yeah. So I thought it was really faithful to that. It's a movie that I think told its story for its audience, and as a 30-year-old or almost 40-year-old man, I'm not the audience for that movie. So I'm like, I still like this. I still think this is fine. This is well made. That's just why it didn't make anything for me.
Yeah, but the thing is, I haven't grown up.
Right, fair.
So I still relate.
There's that.
So I don't even necessarily have to talk too much about many of these, but I'll mention a few things. For Aliens Abducted My Parents, now I feel kind of left out. Mm-hmm. This was one of these movies where I was scraping the bottom of the barrel, because I was 195 movies deep, and I thought, man, I'm 5 off, I can do this. And I liked the title, which is why I got it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we'll throw that on, right? I think it was relatively short, too. I was like, let's throw that on. And I watched it, and I'm like, this is really good.
Yeah.
I really wanted to put it 30, but I couldn't. It doesn't break from that, person meets oddball, the girl meets this weirdo.
Right.
Who thinks his parents were abducted. And then and on not a dare, but I think for the school newspaper, she gets close to him so that her friend can write about his life. So it starts out very cruel. Right? It doesn't break from that formula of person meets oddball, starts to like oddball. Oddball finds out the person is a bitch, but then they deal with their problems, and it doesn't break from that formula that you've seen in She's All That many years ago.
Absolutely,
that kind of thing. It doesn't break from that except the central conceit of my parents were abducted by aliens when I was, But it was a really solid indie flick, and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I just thought it was solid for what it did. I liked it more than I thought I was going to. I have no connection to the source material.
Right.
Kill Boksoon, an over the top South Korean action movie, kind of revenge flick. I think there was anyway, whatever. Just over the top action. Just give me that all day.
Absolutely.
Theater Camp was a funny mockumentary. Have you seen or know of American Vandal?
I've heard of it, yeah.
The guy in the first season, I wish I could remember his name, that ended up being, I think he ended up being the Vandal. You would know him, I think, if you saw him. He's in this. And he's so good at, as, just, dinks. He's so good at being, a terrible person. But there's a song in Theater Camp later on when they're doing the presentation called Women Cannot Read.
Okay.
And it's, saying the history of, women and stuff and, coming, becoming more liberated, and then the chorus is "Women cannot read," and I lost it. It's one of the best songs of the year. It is. Theater Camp is such a funny movie. A Good Person, just a solid flick. Unicorn Wars, an animated movie that's really messed up. I think more people should see it. The Iron Claw, such a tragic story.
It is.
And well acted. I don't know that there's anything I hate about that movie. That's probably coming up in yours. I'm guessing, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Eileen, a psychological thriller with Anne Hathaway and Thomasin McKenzie. I gave Mackenzie a nod there in Best Actress, and Anne Hathaway was totally deserving of it too. About this girl kind of looking for more from life, and then she gets thrust into this situation where, I guess I can spoil. Should I spoil? So basically, Mackenzie's character gets invited over to Hathaway's house. This is after you see Anne Hathaway, because she's a psychologist at a prison.
Yeah.
And she's she's with one of the criminals, and the mom comes in, and then the mom is like leaves, like, I don't want to deal with him anymore, right? And this is important context.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mackenzie goes over, and you start noticing some kind of weird things in the house. Like, she doesn't have much food in her fridge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of weird. It's like a psychologist. Like, she probably makes some money, right?
Right.
She goes, she says it much better, but she's basically just like, this isn't my house, and I have the mom tied up in the basement. And I'm like, oh, what? Like, that twist actually got me.
Yeah.
Like, real hard. And I kind of, like, I was watching the movie for the next 10 minutes being like, what? And then, like, Mackenzie's heel turn comes, and she's like, I'm going to help you.
Oh,
right? And then she gets dead. It's a good psychological thriller.
All right. On to the list. On to the top 30 best movies of 2023. I will kick things off with my number 30 best movie of 2023, Napoleon. So this was somewhat disappointing for me because I certainly expected it. When I heard Joaquin Phoenix is going to play Napoleon, I'm like, okay, so this is a layup in my top 15.
Yeah, I mean, and you're a history buff.
Exactly,
I mean,
and that it's going to be
this was for you.
Directed by Ridley Scott. I'm like, okay, this is a finger roll. Like, this is easy. And unfortunately, it really wasn't. And my biggest issue, I guess, with the movie, even though obviously I really liked it, because it's still number 30 on my list. Yeah. So obviously I still really like this movie. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And this is an issue with Ridley Scott movies. He doesn't take the time to really build and develop his characters. He's really focused on these big set pieces, these big beautiful set pieces, these big action sequences, and I totally get that. And those sequences are beautiful, and the set pieces are immaculate, and they're great. And look, I gave Vanessa Kirby props for the way she portrayed Empress Josephine, his wife. And they really tell Napoleon's story through the lens of that relationship. I think the movie should have been titled Napoleon and Josephine. Because when you title the movie Napoleon, you assume you're going to spend most of your time with Napoleon. And it feels like it's about a 60-40 split. Even though the movie is like almost 2.5 hours, I almost wanted the movie to be a little bit longer so that he would take a little more time with individual. You're very arm's length with all of the characters. Even Napoleon, who is like the primary character of the movie, you're at arm's length really with Napoleon. You don't really get to see him develop as a character. You don't really get to see Josephine all that much develop as a character. And that's an issue with Ridley Scott movies, I find, as a whole. But in saying that, obviously I still really enjoyed this movie. It was big, it was pretty, really good performances from Joaquin and Vanessa Kirby. 7.5 out of 10, but it only sits as my number 30.
Yeah, I didn't see it. My little brother was interested in it, but then when it came out, he didn't seem to care if we went to see it. So I said, it doesn't matter to me. Because I don't care about Napoleon, and Joaquin Phoenix is a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
And I've given him awards. And you've given him awards. But for me, I've given him awards, but I don't even consider myself a Joaquin Phoenix fan. I like him, obviously. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge his talent. And I will continue to acknowledge his talent, but he doesn't bring me to movies.
Right.
Really. He's just a guy that I know is going to put in a great performance and probably get nominated. But yeah, and the thing about me is I'm not a history buff. There's like specific maybe eras in history that I take great interest in.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think I kind of was, but then I realized like movies come out and I'm like, I don't care about the time period. And the movie might be great. I might end up watching it and think it's great. I might like Napoleon, but I just was not at all interested in it.
As a history person, one thing I did, maybe I'll go out on this one. One thing I did really like, the way they portrayed Napoleon as a tactician.
Right.
And the way that they portrayed, because probably my favorite military tactic ever, and it's weird to say this, is scorched earth.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's neat.
I love it. Like, I love the concept of I'm so willing to do whatever it takes to beat you that I will burn my own territory to the ground so that you have to chase me, and you can't only in Russia could you do this, obviously. But like, just the Russians just being like, keep coming. Keep coming. Oh, you can't anymore. Oh, what a shame! It's winter. Like I love the concept of scorched earth, and the way it's presented in here is presented really good. And I was waiting for it because I knew that was Napoleon's downfall in Russia was scorched earth. So I'm like, okay, how are they going to portray scorched earth? And I thought they did a really good job of that. So in a lot of instances, the historical accuracy was good. In some other instances, it was kind of jumpy and kind of wonky. So again, I felt like this movie could have been more, but it's still my number 30.
Alright, my number 30 is The Equalizer 3.
Ooh, okay.
I said in a previous video that I haven't been a massive fan of the first two Equalizers, in part because, at least in the first one that I can remember, it just feels like they wanted to find ways to get him good kills based on objects around him, when I thought it just kind of didn't even, I don't know, it just felt forced. While he still doesn't really bring a weapon to any fights in this, at least the kills make a lot more sense. Right. I enjoyed the soundtrack a lot and enjoyed watching this character try to find peace in like a different country that ends up, so spoiler, he doesn't find peace, you gotta kill a bunch of people. But what I really love about this one that I don't remember really thinking during the first two was that Washington's character, who's a complete badass, it's almost shot like a horror movie. Like, especially at the beginning, you go in and he's already, like, killed some people, and Zack Snyder did this in Batman vs. Superman, where Batman was kind of shot like a horror movie, especially in one scene. It was like, and Washington was, like, scary in this, almost.
Yes.
Even though he was in no real danger in any fights, he kind of just came and killed. Mm-hmm. But there's just ways with the angles and the menacing music and the way they kind of portrayed him is, like, almost something, like, beyond human.
Right.
And he's obviously still a human, but I really appreciated the way that this movie was shot in that regard to portray him. And I think that's what made me love the movie.
And that face that only he can make.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like,
I might as well talk about it. There's a Denzel Washington face. I almost forgot to mention this. Every time I mention Washington, there's this face that he makes, the Denzel face, where you're like, ah, crap. And it happens whenever there's like every movie, and I'm like, there it is.
There's the Denzel.
I'm
face.
scared now. I'm happy, and the thing is, like, I like the director, like Antoine Fuqua or whatever. I think because he did Training Day years ago. And like, I like him, and I think him and Washington are a winning team. I just didn't connect until this one, and while I still don't think they need a fourth one, I'm probably more excited for a fourth one if they make it than I would have been, because 3 was so good. Although, and it's funny though, because my dad, who's getting a lot of mention here, he likes the first 2 and didn't like this one. And I understand why, because like this one is slow.
Yeah.
It is. It's really slow, comparatively, I think. And yet I really got into it. And there's like a lot of foreign language stuff in it, and I don't know, I just got into this one. I came out of it being like, alright, didn't expect to enjoy that one as much as I did.
Yeah.
So, number 30, The Equalizer 3.
The one thing that I did kind of want to add about Equalizer 3, I think maybe this kind of impacted my enjoyment of it a little bit. I didn't really think they had a great antagonist. I wasn't super on board with the, like, so like if the threat to me is less believable, then it kind of impacts, like, what I felt like the more at risk that McCall was, the better in this, because he had he had moments in this movie where he's like at risk, obviously, and I was like, that material where he's more at risk, the better, like the better it was for my personal enjoyment of the movie. So kind of with a less than impactful antagonist, I kind of it never really got me to that point where like this could have been in contention for like an honorable mention or something. So right. I think that might have impacted my enjoyment of it a little bit.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
I don't disagree that the antagonist, I don't think they were like, the whole group really was especially memorable. But also, most movies, and this doesn't excuse movies for doing this, but most movies don't really have that antagonists that are that memorable anyway.
Right.
Which, again, is not an excuse. But I will add on to this. The reason I'm okay with it here is because, to me, this movie is a power fantasy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? So while I actually think your criticism is completely valid, and I actually think that I'm probably... I don't know that people like this movie as much as I did. I don't know. I don't know what reception was like on this. Nobody really talked to me about it. But I see your point. I will just add, and then the audience can decide for themselves who's right, that I think this is just a power fantasy.
Yeah.
And which is okay sometimes. Not that you want every movie to be like a power fantasy.
My number 29 best movie of 2023 is The Color Purple. The musical adaptation of the Alice Walker book that's set kind of in the beginning of the 1900s. Super solid ensemble cast. There's not... they're getting a lot of awards buzz, but my personal feeling was that there wasn't really a single person that stood out. It was just... But in terms of the ensemble performance, I thought the ensemble was fantastic. And there's so many character... interactions and so many interpersonal relationships at play at one time. It's like it was a movie with no wasted motion. There's always something happening. I never hit any dead zones in the movie where I'm just 15 minutes have gone by, nothing of interest has happened. Right. I'm kind of zoning out. All the songs come from the diaphragm. They're real deep. I loved the songs. I loved every single song. There was not a weak song in this entire soundtrack. And they were performed incredibly well. And it was one of those movies where I went into it with very little expectation. I'll be perfectly honest. The main reason I saw this movie was that Cineplex was offering me 5,000 scene points to see 3 particular movies in a particular period of time. And The Color Purple was one of them. And I'm like... okay, well, I'm going to see that towards, that it's a means to an end. But then I watched it and I was like, I'm actually really glad that I saw this now. I really, really wound up appreciating this movie more so than I thought I would, even though, and I want to make this point, they're not singing my song. They're not telling my story, but you don't have to. You can appreciate a movie like this, whether it's singing your song or telling your story or not, but everything that happened that I saw in this movie really, really worked well for me. I thought Blitz Bazawul, who's the director, achieved something really special there by merging the best parts of the stage show with the best parts of the original movie adaptation of The Color Purple and the book and everything like that. Merging all these 3 things together was a big task. I think Blitz Bazawul did an incredible job doing that. So it was another 7.5 out of 10. It's my number 29, The Color Purple.
Yeah, we're starting off with 2 movies I haven't watched.
There you go.
I zero interest.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, totally.
My number 29 will probably be pretty quick, unless you come up with something substantial here, is Blue Beetle.
Ooh, okay.
Does this movie reinvent the wheel in an era of superhero fatigue? Nah. Is it a damn good superhero movie? Yeah,
absolutely.
It is. The Blue Beetle suit is really cool.
Yeah.
I thought the design was excellent. There's a fight scene later on in the movie that they play a Cypress Hill song. That's a great fight scene. I was watching, I was like, oh, that's awesome, right?
It's pretty good.
This is why it'll be quick, because it's just a fun superhero movie done dirty by the box office. Now I understand why people don't go see it.
Right.
I understand, but you should have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has those couple of body horror elements in it there as these trying to meld with the suit. And it's not on a Sam Raimi level of body horror, but it's there's little pieces in it that is just that's an interesting flavoring to this movie. Cool. All right, I dig that.
And there was an importance on family, and it was emotional at times, and people more so the anti-woke crowd has always criticized the MCU for being the MCU and the comment the social commentary, the wokeness.
Right.
I don't know why I did it, because some of it is woke, but whatever. But this movie, I don't really remember having really much of that.
No.
Unless you think having Hispanic people is woke or something.
Well, they did in the marketing for the movie. They did play up like this is a superhero for us, and this is a. But I mean, that's whatever. Like that's. And there's absolutely elements of that in there. There's a ton of elements of Latino culture in the movie.
The problem,
so it makes sense.
The problem is this whole conversation around wokeness and stuff has gotten so bad that now you can't even respect and showcase a culture anymore.
Right.
Like, even if it's pure and it's not crapping on anything, you can't. You're not even allowed to just do that anymore, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like what makes stuff fun, is to have culture, different cultures. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Asian, black, white, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. Just culture is fun.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, I don't know. Blue Beetle was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I echo all of that. I really enjoyed it too.
Good.
My number 28 best movie of 2023 is probably going to be a surprise entry on the list. It's Joyride.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun with Joyride.
Yeah.
Like, a lady hangover meets Crazy Rich Asians. Like, I totally dug that. And this, by the way, this is a stupid way to judge movies, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, like, the 4 main women in this movie, none of them have, like, big names in Hollywood, right? Like, none of them, I don't think, are, like huge, like, names that are, you see it on a marquee and you know.
Yeah.
Right? And that actually made me feel really good, because you come to a point, I find, with Hollywood, and especially with ethnicities in Hollywood, where it's like, well, we can't make an Asian-led movie if Awkwafina's not in it.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody knows Awkwafina's name.
Yes.
So, and this is nothing against I love Awkwafina.
I like her too. Honestly.
She is a cringe connoisseuse, and I love her.
She was in some stuff this year that I can't remember that I did like.
I dig her. I really do.
Yeah,
she was in a bit of a bit part in, well, not really a bit part in Renfield, but she was in Renfield. She was in a couple other things.
She was in something else I liked, and I liked her role in it, but I cannot remember what it was.
Right, and she did some voice work this year too. But, like, unfortunately, Joyride was, I think, absolutely bombed at the box office.
No, that sucks.
And it didn't deserve to. I really wished it would have been one of those movies that got, like, the big groundswell after the opening. Like, but I thought it was a really entertaining movie. It doesn't have to have, like, a great overarching story. It has one, and it's good. But it doesn't have, like, it can just be, this is what 2023 kind of was to me. It can just be a good time at the movies. Yeah. And that's exactly what Joyride was. So I gave it, it was another one that had 75. We don't hit the 80s for a little bit yet, but it winds up my number 28.
I'm on a 7 out of 10, which is good on my scale. Do you remember the opening? Because the opening bit made me laugh a lot and set my expectations high. So I obviously really are they sitting there watching some white people or something? Is that the movie?
Could be.
And there's I can't remember what the joke was, but it was a really funny thing one of them said. I thought the cast had good chemistry.
Yeah.
And it was just good comedy through and through.
Yeah.
And that's just, like you said, fun at the movies.
Yeah, good consistent laughs straight through. Not overwhelming, like I wasn't dying of laughter, but I was laughing consistently.
Yeah.
So.
I was apparently dying of laughter at the beginning.
Right.
So we just put on the beginning and rewatched it, and it's still so funny. And just aside from the humor itself, there was something I actually really liked about it, because I'm aware of Hollywood and this view on white people. So I gotta be honest, I'm a little cautious sometimes of I like a joke about a white person, don't get me wrong. When it's done well, it's funny. But sometimes Hollywood gets into this it's cringe. But this was actually really nice, because the scene is there's the Asian couple, and then the white people come up. And they're like, oh, are you from China? It's like, yes. Why? And you kind of expect some oh my god. It is awkward. It's incredible. Because you know that, you know what the Chinese people are feeling, and with the white people, you know if you pay attention to the culture at all. But then it's because we thought our daughter might want to meet her. And they're like, oh yeah, why? And you kind of think, yeah, because the white people want diversity. But then it's an Asian kid.
Yeah.
And it's really nice. right? It instantly flips it on
Yeah.
its head, which is like really cool.
This is officially, everyone can get it, but Joyride is getting it in the good sense.
Yeah, that beginning is great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you put that on. I laughed again. My number 28 is The Hunger Games: A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes,
Ooh,
which was an
great.
honorable mention, but I decided I want to put it in there because I'm defending this movie. You know, certain groups of people were celebrating its demise. I don't know how much it actually ended up making at the box office, but it wasn't anything too amazing. And of course, it's the Rachel Zegler hate, right? They hate her. There's a certain part of the internet that hates this girl. And admittedly, she has said some dumb things in the past.
Yep.
Or even fairly recently, honestly. But she's a talented actress.
Yeah.
And they want her to fail so bad because, like, I think the stuff she's in doesn't make a ton of money. Like, she's been... And which annoys me when they talk about it. Yeah, I'm just ranting about haters now. She's getting respect for her roles. Like, she's putting in good performances. Her vocals here are top-notch. She's a great singer.
Yep.
I don't hate this girl. I'm not saying I love her as an actress or whatever, but I like her. So... I mean, I like the Hunger Games movies a lot, generally. And then this is not, this is not as good as the original ones, like with Jennifer Lawrence. I don't think it's better or as good as any of them, really. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
No. Like, to kind of piggyback on what you said about her singing, like, so Jennifer Lawrence obviously does the version of The Hanging Tree, and then Rachel Zegler does her version of The Hanging Tree in this movie. Rachel Zegler's version of The Hanging Tree is, like, spellbindingly beautiful.
Yeah.
It is so good. I remember being really impressed because I was like, Jennifer Lawrence isn't a singer. But, like, I was really impressed with her version of The Hanging Tree back in the day. Yeah. And I heard this and I'm like, oh my god, this is painful. This is so beautiful. This is such a good song. And performed so incredibly.
Yeah, in terms of the quality of the movie, I remember thinking, like, parts 1 and 2 I really liked. And then, weirdly enough, part 3, where they try to show the heel turn of Snow, I thought could have actually been turned into a sequel and have Snow and Lucy Gray kind of live together and then get the heel turn. I think that actually could have been like a good movie. Because even though what I love about the Hunger Games, and why I actually love Mockingjay, the Mockingjays the most, which I know is like unpopular, but those are actually my favorite, is I love the political aspects of it. And this one, when it gets into the stuff with Snow and Lucy Gray, kind of abandons the political aspect, but okay, that's fine. So they lean more into the personal aspects. I just feel like it was rushed in part 3. They're like, okay, we got to make Snow a bad guy, because remember, Snow's a bad guy, right?
Right.
In the original movies. I would have actually taken a sequel for this and probably been like reasonably excited. And yeah, some analysts kind of pointed out when talking about the box office and stuff, a couple things, like prequels don't make as much money, and then just, the franchise has been dormant, and then so it kind of makes sense for it to not make much money. But he also said that a movie about the rise of a fascist regime and downfall of society isn't interesting to people, but like that's my favorite part of the movie. The first part, when it's really talking about that stuff, like that is really interesting to me. And I'm a big Hunger Games movie fan, like honestly.
The world of Panem is one that like I didn't give enough credit to with the original series. Yeah. Because when this movie got announced, well, like, first of all, when the book came out, I was like, oh, that's cool. They did another Hunger Games book. Oh, cool. It's a prequel. That seems interesting. And then when the trailers and stuff came out for the movie, I was just like, I'm like unreasonably excited to go back into this world. I can't wait for this.
And it doesn't feel rushed because it's been quite some time, right? Since Mockingjay Part 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I've rated a Hunger Games movie. Well, I rated this one 8 out of 10, but of the original 4, I don't think I rated any of them lower than 8.5. And I actually gave, I think, both Mockingjays a 9 out of 10.
Ooh, wow.
Like, I legitimately love those movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like this one, and I actually feel like this one might even be one that ages better with time. Like, I might down the road look at this and be like, you know what, 8.5. Like, so maybe this is as good as, like, the first Hunger Games for me.
My number 27 best movie of 2023 is Sisu. So one that I didn't see until actually like late in the year. I had it for quite some time, and it was like on my list very early this year because like it came out relatively early, and I'm like, oh, Sisu, that looks so cool. And just time kept going and time kept going and time kept going. And I was like, frick, I haven't watched Sisu yet, so I was like, I gotta sit down and finally watch this. And I really dug it. I know some people kind of felt like it straddled this frustrating middle ground of like being like a little too serious and not over the top enough. Like maybe feeling like the trailer kind of led people to believe that it was going to be more over the top than it was. But like the second half of that movie is pretty lavish. Like especially like it might start maybe a little bit slower than maybe people were expecting it to. Like I was sold on seeing this the first time I saw the trailer.
Yeah.
The first trailer I was like, I am sold on this. I absolutely want to see this. But like it's pretty gruesome. It gets its tone right. It gives me like the one-man wrecking crew kill fest that I was expecting from the movie. So, I don't know. It gave me the atmosphere that I was looking for, and it gave me like some real like intense high points, like the minefield, super, and because like all the sound design kind of just like drops, and the intensity of like every step could be this person's impending death. I thought that scene was really good, and the hanging scene was really intense as well. Like probably the most, this is going to be a weird way to put this, but I'm going to say it, the most intense hanging scene I've seen since 12 Years a Slave, probably. Like, because there's a really intense hanging scene in there too, and I think the hanging scene in Sisu is pretty intense as well. So it's another 7.5 out of 10, and it's my number 20, what was that, 27? Number 27.
I'll just read my 7.5 out of 10 review. I will say that I was a little disappointed, but I did obviously like the movie. What I love, the dog lives.
Yep.
that's worth a passing grade on its own. But Helander, the director, or Helander, does a lot to establish an atmosphere that is otherworldly, hellish, and lonely. Really showcasing how alone this guy is how alone this guy is in the Finnish Lapland. Basically a character itself. I think I considered him actually for best director for this, now that I think about it. The rest is less inspired but still good, such as Tomila's gritty, mostly silent performance. The action is gory but kind of corny sometimes. You said something about people thought maybe it was a little silly, or maybe you actually used the word corny. I don't know, I can't remember what you said.
So like, what I kept seeing from people was like, it's in some cases like more serious than they expect. Like it's a little too serious. It's not over the top enough.
Oh, okay. No, I just remember thinking some of it was a little corny. I think they could have done more with it. But really, the tone / atmosphere is the star here, and you would mention the tone, I think. So I'm in a lot of agreement with you, I guess. I got no hate for this movie, just kind of expect a little more, because I really thought this would be up my alley more than it was.
Right. I kind of thought this could be like a dark horse for like an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah, me too. My number 27 is Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
Ooh.
Remember, I saw a lot of movies, so my list is actually just like mostly highly rated, fairly highly rated movies, because I've seen so many. So I actually really like this movie. I think this is legitimately a great movie. If this is what Transformers is going to be from now on, you sign me up. They made the human elements less offensive. It had good action, a lot of heart, a cool reveal at the end, a banging hip-hop soundtrack, some humor that worked, good visuals, the Maximals, and a Prime who's occasionally angry. Sure, the story is predictable and there's some hokiness in the dialogue, but I didn't care, and I can't wait for the next one. Transformers are basically humans.
Yes.
You don't really need so much human in these movies because they have characteristics of humans. We can relate.
Right.
I have some examples though of where it seems like they're going to go a route that I would have hated, and then they swerve. They subvert it. So there's like a scene where Prime is trying to sacrifice himself, and then Noah shows up and tries to save him. He does not, and then Primal swoops in and does it. I know they wanted to go for the We Are Brothers in Arms thing for Noah and Prime, but having Primal be the one to save it actually furthers that theme in a more effective way.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
That's fair.
There's a when Noah shows up to fight Scourge, a guy who wrecked Prime earlier, I was like, oh no. Like, oh, come on. But then Prime shows up and he's like, nah, Noah isn't alone. And I was relieved. And then another one, they even had enough sense. Instead of just having Noah run around in a robot war zone without anything, they gave him a suit.
Yeah.
So it's like, this makes sense. Right? Like, because I hate when it's like, yeah, Prime can't get the job done, but this guy can.
Don't worry, here comes Mark Wahlberg with a big gun.
Like, it's like, come on. Like, but this movie, legitimately a great action movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that it did anything really that wrong, you know, like nothing too major. So I'm quite a fan of my number 27, Transformers: Rise of the Beast.
Which is good. Like you wound up liking that movie a bit more than I did, but I still really like. I saw that in a group. It was me and I think maybe Jonah and Chrissy and maybe a couple of other people. It might have been one of Jonah's. No, it wasn't his birthday movie. In any case, so seeing it with a group was better because it was a group that was really into the movie, so it was like, oh, hey, this is cool, and I think that that kind of heightened my appreciation for it. But I'm so glad that you dug that so much, and I'm so glad that we got like a really good, I don't want to call it a rebound necessarily, but like a nice return to form for like a really good Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Because you want a future for that franchise.
As I read my notes, I was like, maybe I could have even put this higher, to be honest. I gotta come through the door blasting on something. Take away my critic card. Because I watched Asteroid City, and then this.
Oh, yeah?
And this crap's all over Asteroid City. You give me this 10 out of 10 times over that turd, Asteroid City.
Speaking of Jonah's birthday movie, it's Jonah's birthday movie at number 26, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. So, I love, first of all, I love the conversation around this from a lot of people that are like really off-put by the way the Turtles talked. And I'm like, have you ever talked to 14-year-olds? Like, that's how they talk. Like, that's like the most authentic part of the whole movie, I think.
Yeah,
like,
they wanted to play up the teenager part of it.
Right.
And
it's
they
like
did.
that was the whole point, guys. And you're just reaffirming that they did a really good job. Like
there was a scene, and I'll let you talk, sorry.
Yeah.
There was a scene, I can't remember what joke they told, but it was terrible. And they just kept repeating it.
Was it the bacon, egg, and cheese? No.
I can't remember. And it kept going on and on about it. I think April's sitting there, she's just like, oh my god. And it just kept going. And that's what made it funny, because it was just a bunch of like teenagers riffing.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like, I'm not sure what you wanted if you hated that. Like, you're not gonna get, like, this isn't The Last Ronin. Like, this is not, this is something totally different. And so, like, there were certain parts of it, I think, that were, like, a little hit and miss for me. I didn't love Splinter. I didn't love April O'Neil. But the thing that this movie does best is, like, the jokes are just go. Like, the jokes are just coming at you the whole time. And it's so funny. And it's just so fun and entertaining. Like, just give me a fun Ninja Turtles movie, and that's exactly what they gave me. And now for the next one, you're gonna get that ramp up of here comes Shredder, and it's gonna get a little more menacing and a little more like the stakes are gonna be raised a little bit.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, but like you're still gonna have that kind of that underscoring of like they're teenagers and they're just having fun being teenagers. And they're going to be
totally in over their head.
Exactly.
With Shredder.
100%. And I can't wait for that. I can't wait for... The best thing I can say about this is I can't wait for the future of the Ninja Turtles franchise. And the 10-year-old kid in me is so happy being able to say that. So, number 26 on my list, but potentially number 1 in my heart, I guess. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
You made me even more excited for the sequel than I already was.
Yes.
Ninja Turtles, second most important intellectual property in my life. Wow. Probably. From being a kid, like there's Mario and there's Ninja Turtles, And that was me.
Yeah.
That was my love. Like Mario and Ninja Turtles. So to get a good Ninja Turtles movie also just makes me be like, yeah. And here's the thing, like, I love me the Dark Ninja Turtles. I actually want, I don't necessarily want The Last Ronin because it feels like they're kind of milking it now because there's going to be a game and there's obviously, there's a prequel to Last Ronin. I just want an adaptation kind of like the first live action movie that was darker of showing the long struggle between like Shredder and Splinter. And I do want that movie. I really do. Like really, really, really badly. But I will also take this. Right, alongside it. Mm-hmm. I know that they're not making the dark one, but yeah, that's a good pick. Although, kind of sad that it's not higher. A little sad. My number 26 is Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Ooh, very nice.
I don't know what I can say that you haven't thought of, except for maybe this. I couldn't help but think that this was like a D&D Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Had the same kind of feel of the Avengers coming together. You know, good action. Even had some scenes that, like, near the end that even kind of, like, seemed like the Hulk smashing people. It was just... It felt like the Avengers, and that's not a criticism. It was kind of like... It was pretty cool, and it never let... It never let the comedy get in the way of the heart, either.
Right.
Which is so hard to do, and even the MCU themselves sometimes screw up on that.
Totally.
And there's no reason to compare this movie to the MCU. I just remember watching it being like... this kind of feels like the first Avengers movie in a good way. I mean, we can talk about all this same stuff. It's, you know, it's funny. It's nice to see a D&D movie be really good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like completely in love with it, obviously, but I did really enjoy it, and that was nice.
I'm not completely in love with it either, which is why it's my number 25. So we might as well keep talking.
So close to a consensus.
So close to a consensus here. So, like,
hate when this happens.
You know, so
I can't put it down as a consensus, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, obviously, and it's what I loved to see about this. Like I mentioned earlier, like it's so encapsulated, like the fun of like a campy D&D friend group having their D&D campaign, and like us getting to see it, but from like the God's Eye perspective, basically, of like watching the actual campaign that's built in the mind's eye of the players, basically. I really liked most of the characters. I think the ensemble cast is really good. I shouted out Regé-Jean Page, who plays like basically like the vanguard paladin, like the pure good character, and I was like, of all the characters, I'm most interested to see where he goes in future films, and please make future films.
Yeah.
Like, I would revisit this 2 to 3 more times, I think. It actually got me on an emotional level at the end, which I wasn't expecting from the D&D movie, so that was nice as well.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. That's why it's like the comedy doesn't get in the way of the heart.
Yeah.
My number 25 is Extraction 2.
Ooh, okay.
Now, the first was a very, very pleasant surprise for me. I was amazed at how it basically flirted with John Wick levels of choreography.
Right.
And Hemsworth was great and is still great in this role. I didn't need the sequel. It was like, well, okay, you guys, it must have done well for Netflix. This is a lesser movie than the first. The action isn't quite as good, and it's still not John Wick levels, though again, it flirts with it occasionally. But even though the action isn't as good, there's like more of an emotional kick in this one. Even though the end itself was not as good as the first. That's pretty much all I got to say. It's just, they're just like underrated like action franchise on Netflix that I never hear talked about. That's just kind of just puttering along, you know? And like, I'll watch a third, although I'm expecting the quality to kind of go down a little bit more if they keep doing it, because it doesn't really seem like
it's tough to not have that dip.
Yeah, so there might come a time if they keep making them where I'm like where it stops making my list, and I'm like, okay, fellas, like stop. But I'll take another one. Another one would be good. If
hit me again.
Yeah, one more time. Hit me, baby, one more time.
Miss Britney Spears.
An angel if there ever was.
My number 24, best movie of 2023. One pick before the champagne picks begin.
Yeah.
That is going to be unfortunately, one of the more unfortunate entries on the list, which is Scream 6. So it's not unfortunate because the quality of the movie was bad, because clearly it's not. I really, really dug Scream 6. It's unfortunate because I was really looking forward to Scream 7, and then stuff happened. It doesn't look like we're going to get that.
Yeah, I would have taken another Scream or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how they're going to pivot, but hopefully they find a way. It's remarkable to me that Scream as a franchise is 6 features deep, and it's still putting out... Like, I understand there was a bit of a pretty decent gap in there, but, like, especially these newer Screams have been very good.
Yeah.
And, like, 6 features deep, they shouldn't still be very good.
Yeah.
Or arguably getting better. Like,
I think Scream 6 is the best one.
right, so it's like, that's not, that should not be, almost,
Yeah,
like, it's not
sure.
typical, right? And it was made, it's not, like, the best directed movie that you're gonna see all year, not by a long shot, but it's made by people who love Scream movies and know how to make a Scream movie, and that's what you need. Like, when you have like a horror movie made by a great director might not be as good as a horror movie made by someone who really loves making horror movies. You know what I mean? Like, a Martin Scorsese horror movie is not gonna work the
It's a
same
curiosity,
way.
but
It's
it's probably not gonna...
It's not gonna work the same way as an Eli Roth horror movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they're totally different. And this is very obviously made by people who love making Scream movies. Obviously, it's self-aware. It's streamlined. Like, it's a really tight movie. There's always something happening. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's not dragged down by its nostalgia plays either. There's a lot of nostalgia plays, obviously, in the 6th entry in a franchise, but it's not dragged down by them. They're not like, okay, like, there's another nostalgia, like, all right, it's there because it's got to be there. Like, they all feel like genuine and they're not dragged down by that. So I really dug Scream 6, and I'm really sad that it's probably over now. So that's my number 24.
Fair enough. My number 24 is a movie called Furies. And I always got to stop myself because I almost say furries every time.
Circle of Trust? Was the first thought that came to mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's hard not to look at them like, furries! It's just a mysterious woman trains a trio of girls to take revenge on a criminal gang that abuses females. I love revenge movies. Love over-the-top action movies. This does very little to build said characters, but outside of like the main girl and the crime boss, I don't even care.
Right.
The action makes up for it, and that's really all I want. I mean, I do give some credit to how it's shot. It's colorful, but the colors are rather like dingy, and I really like the opening scene. And this movie frames smoking really well. I don't know. There's something about I hate smoking in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But in movies, it can make people look so cool when done well. And the right-hand man of the crime boss, I think, is always framed so cool. So just a stylish action movie. I love those. You can give me those all day. And this isn't the end of that like genre on this list. So yeah, my number 24 is Furies, not Furries.
Furries changes the context of that movie in a big way. It's so funny. There's a content creator that I really like who has had also has a line about smoking that really kind of echoes what you were saying there. Because what she says was, she's like, I think smoking is disgusting, but I think seeing someone smoke, like, on a big screen is the hottest thing I've ever seen.
Like, I never get tired of, like, old detectives puffing on their cigarettes in movies. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, totally. Now it's time to make the champagne pick of the list. The number 23 best movie of 2023. And for me, it's the happiest and most uplifting movie that I saw all year, Killers of the Flower Moon. So yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon is my number 23. And this will land a lot lower. Like, this lands a lot lower than it will land for a lot of people. this falls very firmly in the category for me of movie I respect more than I enjoy.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
Now, this movie absolutely would have benefited from a second viewing, but who's got 3 more hours?
So you never ended up watching it again?
I didn't end up watching it a second time, unfortunately. And it probably deserved it, because there's so much material here, and there's so much going on, that I think it really would have benefited from that second viewing. And if I would have watched it a second time, I almost guarantee you the movie would have been higher. But as it stands, how I feel about Killers is this. It's a movie that shows, like, technical brilliance in how it's produced and how it looks. And Martin Scorsese is a master, while at the same time, I don't find myself absolutely loving his films. But I think, as a director, I think he's fantastic. Obviously, a great performance from Leonardo DiCaprio. I mentioned it. It might be the best Leo since The Revenant, maybe. I'm not sure. I'd really have to sit down and think about that one. But he was great. Lily Gladstone was excellent in this movie. But I can't sit here and proclaim, like, absolute love for it. I don't absolutely love the way that it chooses to tell its story, and like there's stuff with it that, like, again, maybe a second viewing would change my feelings on that. But as it stands right now, it's my first entry that is an 8 out of 10. So it's my first 80 on the list. So I really enjoyed this movie. It is a really quality movie, but one that I couldn't kind of fully give myself to and fall in love with, and that's why it's only number 23.
Okay. So I gave this a 6 out of 10.
Ooh, wow!
Yeah, I will say this. I'm kind of with you on that. I don't know that I don't love many Scorsese films. I think there's some I really, really like, and there might even be some that I technically love. Like, I think I love Taxi Driver.
Right.
Like, I'm not that impressed by the directing, because his attempted magnitude occasionally stumbled. Leo was good, and some others were good, like you said, but then there was other performances that were hokey. And I hate to say this, but some of the native performances were hokey, and that's sad, because it's their tragedy.
Right.
Right? And someone needed to edit Scorsese down here. It didn't earn the length. Like, a perfect example is, like, near the end, where the Lucky Strikes Presents part?
Yeah.
Where, like, that happened, and I'm like, what is this? And then Scorsese inserts himself to, like, really hammer it home, and I'm like, this part is so unnecessary. There's nothing in this movie to suggest that this, like, really massive shift in, like, not so much tone, but, like, presentation, right, was gonna happen. Like, it didn't earn it, right? Like, I'm okay with movies kind of doing something a little different all of a sudden, but this was like, so now you're just adding more to the movie, honestly. That's all. Like, like, Scorsese did everything he could to try to smother these tragic events. I don't know why this movie is so well regarded. Like, I enjoyed it. Like, a 6 out of 10 is still, like, an enjoyment. But there's so much I dislike about this. Honestly, this is my I don't get it this year, I think.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who really love it, and I'm sure Zach really loves it. I have a guy at work that really loved it, and I'm just like, eh. Alright, my champagne pick is going to be fairly quick. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Ooh, okay.
Here's the thing. I've been on record. I've rated Mission Impossible movies since it kind of came back, like after 2 and 3, but the ones after that, and I love the first one immensely. I've been on record saying they're really good. Probably 9 out of 10s.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready for the series to end, though. They're good. This is a good action movie. Like, a great one. But I'm not feeling the same love. So once, like, part 2 is over, I'm hoping that is it. And we just let it go. We've had a great run of action movies that don't make a lick of sense. And it doesn't, like, you know, can you follow the plot? Probably not.
Yeah, they're so complex.
Yeah.
But none of it matters.
That's exactly it. None of it matters. And, you know, that's fine. For whatever reason in this series, I am completely okay with just watching it being like, I don't remember what happened. I don't understand what is happening.
I don't know who that person is.
I don't even remember who that is. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm just watching Tom Cruise and all that, and just it's a great series. I hope part 2 is even better than this, and I do really like this. I'm not trying to like crap on it. I feel it in my heart that I am ready for this to be over.
Right.
And that's why this isn't rated higher than it could have been, because if I was like, it could have been in the, like 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever. But I don't know. I'm just kind of ready for it. Like, as time went on after I watched it, I was like, they're just movies I feel like a little more passionate towards that I rated about the same. So I think I'll put those ahead.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I wanted to add on, like, something about Mission Impossible there that you said. Like, I'm going to literally read you the first line of my review from Criticker because it so, like, affirms basically what you just said there. The true dichotomy of the Mission Impossible franchise is that they are complex, probably convoluted stories told with very simple storytelling. Like, they're really convoluted, like, who shot John stories, but they're told very simply. And it's usually to the benefit, because it usually works. And I would agree, like, it totally, and you're not saying it didn't work there, like, it totally still worked there. But it's, I get where the
losing a little bit of
steam.
steam. Yeah, I fully expect the next part to also be on my list.
Yeah,
and like an 8.5 at least. I fully expect that.
My number 22, best movie of 2023, and I say this with the understanding that my previous movie was Killers of the Flower Moon. So you know what was better than a 3-hour-long Martin Scorsese movie?
Almost everything. No, just kidding.
A horror movie made by YouTubers. Talk to Me is number 22.
Is that the one with the hand?
Yes.
Oh, we got beef.
So that's made by a YouTube team called, I think, Raka Raka.
I didn't know that. Though.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool.
It's a brother team. It's Danny and Michael Philippou. And I'm pretty sure they're like a YouTube team called Raka Raka.
Yeah.
And I was like struck by how much I enjoyed this. Like, when my first line in this review, when YouTubers become filmmakers, it should be a disaster sandwich. I thought this was like a super credible debut horror movie. Like, it's very clear they've never made a movie before. But I thought, like, in terms of like a debut film, I thought it was super credible. I thought it kind of explored these ideas of like family and grief, and I thought it did it fairly well. Pretty brisk runtime. It was fairly short. I thought it had some surprise for a horror movie. I thought it had like some surprising depth, because I said earlier, like, horror movies can be used to explore these themes. It's just a lot of the time they aren't. But I thought this was an instance where it was actually used to explore some deeper themes. I'm not totally in love with it, but I thought it was a little, like, kind of shy on some, like, visual intrigue. Like, I thought maybe they could have done some more stuff with that. I thought Sophie Wilde was really, really good in this as well. So this really, really worked for me, and I give it my number 22 at an 8 out of 10.
You picked 2 movies in a row where I'm kind of like, I don't get it. Because this was well received, or at least last time I checked it was. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. And our buddy Robbie also didn't like it. Well, I mean, I liked it, technically. Okay. That's like a mild recommendation.
Right.
Because there was things to like about it. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned the visuals, and I literally say it's not that visually interesting.
Right.
Outside of the ending and maybe a couple of decent scenes, there wasn't a whole lot that stuck out to me. I thought some of the movie was silly. I don't know. And I was excited. I was like, oh, people really like this? Okay. Let's go, and maybe this is one of the great horror movies, but I don't know how many of the great horror movies hit for me this year. I mean, there's a couple. There's a couple I can think of. Like, Mithrigan didn't really hit, that much for me. But you know what? I'm happy that you're happy, and I'm glad that you got such enjoyment of that, and you put it above Killers of the Flower Moon. Even though technically I like Killers of the Flower Moon more.
I was going to say, ranking, I was like...
But I love the choice. I love the choice. My number 22 is... The Creator.
Ooh, okay.
I like this a lot more than you. I understand that the plot is nothing that hasn't been done before. And sometimes better, I'm sure. I understand that The Creator isn't even Gareth Edwards' best sci-fi flick. Like, Rogue One is a better movie. Rogue One is great, though. Rogue One is, like, I think, like, the best Star Wars movie since, like, friggin' Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
Right. Like, I love Rogue One. I think Rogue One is delicious. And I think the creator is delicious to a lesser degree.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks outstanding while it's telling its admittedly predictable story. While it's mining familiar territory. But I also think it's a touching story about father and son. The great performance by Washington, who I hope keeps getting more and more stuff because his dad and he's carved a good career for himself.
Yeah,
honestly.
absolutely.
And I really like seeing him. Before it was just Denzel's son, but now it's you know what, John David, you're really good too.
Yeah.
Right. I really like you. And the 7-year-old was great. Mm-hmm. And I guess his name was Voiles or Voiles or something, because I wrote here, if you don't tear up when Voiles delivers "Am I Going to Heaven?" Later on in the movie, I don't know what to tell you, because that part is emotional. Right. And this is heavy, mature, violent science fiction that doesn't shy away from the horrors of war. I think the creator is a great movie, and I understand that I'm kind of sort of alone in this. I know. I get it. But I'll still fight. So, number 22. A movie that you're not a super fan of, but The Creator.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's nothing in there really I think that I overly disagree with. Yeah, I think you just... I may have been maybe a victim of my own expectations too, because I guess not that you didn't have high expectations for the movie, but I did have high expectations. I really looked forward to it, and it just didn't quite deliver to me what I was hoping it would. But to your point, I still liked it.
I'm going to tell you, there's some sci-fi this year, including this pick, that I'm a defender of that is just not as well received. Not that this was poorly received or anything. Just I'm a bit of a defender of sci-fi this year, I think. So. Know that going forward. Right.
It's time for the 2 final picks of this first part of our 3-part top 30 best films of 2023, and this is my number 21 best movie of 2023, the Super Mario Brothers movie.
That's too low. That's too low.
So this is going to be very brief, but this movie gave me everything that I wanted from this movie. It gave me everything that I was looking for. I love how people were complaining about the story was really simple. It's Mario. Mario jumps through 8 levels and saves the princess. Right. And did it a bunch of times. Right. And you're gonna complain about the story in this being simple. So I don't know what you were expecting. Killers of the Toadstool Moon? I don't understand what you guys were looking for from the Super Mario Brothers movie, but what it gave me was a really good-looking, super fun movie that caters to young fans as well as the old-school Mario players, because you've got a ton of references and callbacks and stuff in the background and the foreground. You're I remember that from this game. I remember that from this. And it actually gave Peach stuff to do. It made all the characters feel important, and I just had fun. Yeah. I'm defending myself against people that didn't like this movie. I was I just had fun, and I don't know how somebody couldn't find an avenue to have fun with the Super Mario Brothers movie. So it's my number 21.
I mean, it hits a lot of what makes film great. It's got a great soundtrack. It's funny. It's animated beautifully. It has many of the elements of an enjoyable movie. Yeah. The counter argument about the story is always, I think a lot of people have said yeah, but a game can get by on less of a story because there's gameplay and whatnot, right? Okay. And the movie will need something more to sink your teeth into because you're not playing it, and I sit there, fair enough, I suppose, but I mean, it has a story though. It's good versus evil essentially, but how's that different than a lot of movies? No, it's not the deepest movie, but the characterization is pretty cool. The Mario and Luigi, there's some touching moments there. That the characterization, the plot isn't much. But I think the characterization is an underrated aspect of it.
Yeah.
Not that it needed it, because it was just fun. But, yeah, the people who don't like Mario, you can get it.
I said you can get it.
You get it so hard. All right, my number 21 is Bottoms.
Ooh, okay.
Two girls hatch a fight club in order to lose their virginity to cheerleaders.
Yes.
I like that premise, you know? I do. It's funny. It's a raunchy comedy. All comedy has to do is make me laugh to be enjoyable, and I really, really laughed at this one. And I didn't expect to laugh as much as I did. That's basically really all I would need to say about that. But there are two quotes I want to mention. I know these quotes don't really represent much of anything. It's just things I saw. There's a Criticker user called Boff, B-O-F, said, if the music budget for your gay-ass broken noses and hearts high school comedy can only afford one bona fide classic to score the big turning moment in the movie, make it Total Eclipse of the Heart. And then make the sort of movie that's just the right side of over the top to deserve Total Eclipse of the Heart. Perfect. That is such... I could not have worded that any better, which is why I just quoted this person. If you just read the opinions of certain people... Like, you don't have to get... they're kind of astonishing sometimes, because you don't have to get every detail of a movie, and I certainly do not, alright? But some stuff are so obvious. Like, this one random, it doesn't mean anything, but this one random was crapping on the movie. So, of course, they're finding everything they can to, like, crap on the logic of the movie, the comedy, whatever. And this person goes, why are the football players in full gear all the time? And I'm sitting there, like, yeah, that's the point. That's the joke. The football team sits under the creation of Adam painting at lunchtime. Their entire identity is football.
Right.
That's the joke. Right? So when you go into a movie, and you don't have to catch every joke. I don't catch every joke about everything of all time, alright? Right. But when you go to crap on a movie, and you use examples of things that you just don't get.
Right.
And I'm sure we've all done it, right? So call me out if I ever do it. That's just funny. And that's just one random person. But I just noticed that when I was looking stuff up.
Right.
The director, Emma Seligman. It should be Seligman. But anyway. She made a movie called Shiva Baby a few years ago. A movie I didn't like. I appreciated certain aspects of it, such as the lead performance of the actress, I can't remember her name, and the soundtrack, which I liked here too. So, to me, and a lot of people like Shiva Baby, but to me, this was like a massive jump. Like, she went from like, oh, this movie's kind of overrated because people really like Shiva Baby, to a movie that I'm like, oh, this is a really great movie. So, an interesting career so far for this director in my eyes, because I really, really like Bottoms.
Nice. Your line about, like, that's the joke, yeah, I don't get every joke, but, like, that's the joke. It just reminds me of the scene from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Was it Rainier Wolfcastle doing stand-up, and he just said, do you ever notice how men always leave the toilet seat up? That's the joke.
Yeah.
You suck, McBain.
It blows my mind.
It's like watching like one of those, I can't remember which of the parody, like the teen comedy parody movies that it was. But it was one of the, it was the one that was like, it was spoofing like She's All That and like Friday Night Lights and
it was one of the good
that.
ones too.
It was one of the good ones. But it was like,
yeah,
if you're watching that movie and the guy that keeps getting like hit in the head and keeps getting concussions, and they're like counting down his concussions.
Yeah, I remember that.
Doctor says I got 4 concussions left or whatever. It would be like sitting there and going like, well, why does he keep getting concussions? Because that's the joke. The joke is he gets concussions. Like, there you have it, folks. Part 1 of 3 now in the books. Our honorable mentions and best movies of 2023, numbers 30 all the way up to number 21. And come back on the next one where we will be doing part 2 inside of our top 20, numbers 20 to number 11, just shy of the top 10. That's coming up in the next bit.
Oh, right at the end. He flubs it right at the end.